Hello and welcome to Past, Present and Future. I'm Russell Hurn. Today I have the great pleasure of talking to the chair of the Italian EMDR Association and president of EMDR Europe. She is an EMDR senior trainer, consultant, author and researcher, and if that's not enough, she's the director of the Psychotraumatology Research Center of Milan. We are truly in the presence of EMDR royalty. It's Isabel Fernandez. Hi, Isabel.
Hello, thanks for your words. This is a very great introduction. You know, I never heard something like that. Okay, so.
Well, it's funny because I wrote down here, EMDR royalty, and it's a shame that this isn't a video because you're actually sat in a chair that looks a bit like a throne.
Oh, is it?
It's an amazing, ornate chair there. It's beautiful.
An old chair, yeah.
I realized from the introduction, I actually left out a number of other roles that you have. You sound incredibly busy.
Yeah, that's right. You know, I think I have been busy since I was in the elementary school. And so it has been getting worse and worse. And of course, the more you do, the more passionate you become. And of course, working in the field of EMDR therapy for the last 20 years has been very busy because there have been so many developments, so many new things all the time, great results, new applications, and research and all that. So it is impossible not to be busy going behind all these developments and all this process that we have been experiencing.
Wow. Just before we get going then and hear some of the stories that you have to tell, can I just say it's so lovely to talk to you, but also that it's still a pleasure and privilege to be part of EMDR Europe.
Okay. Yeah.
We're still there.
You have to, yeah. We're very happy that you're there. And let me tell you, EMDR UK has given a lot of contribution to EMDR Europe from the very beginning and is part of our history. And of course, you will stay with us.
Yeah, we're
Europe.
not leaving.
Yeah, no Brexit for you.
So no need to worry. No. So let's go back in time, because apart from all these amazing things that you've done, there must have been a time before EMDR in your life. And I just wondered how EMDR came along. How did that all get started?
Well, I was a CBT therapist, and I was very busy working in the field of psychosis and doing research. And so I was going to many international CBT congresses and conferences. And one of these, I met this American colleague. She was very passionate about EMDR. She started to talk about EMDR to me and also sending me books from America. I'm talking about the early 90s. So that was the first time I heard from EMDR. And at that point, I decided to go to the USA to take the training. There were a few trainings in Europe. There was not so many possibilities to do a training in Europe, an EMDR training at that time. So I took my EMDR training in Boston, and then in level 2 with Francine Shapiro. She was still training, and so I took level 2 with her. And of course, when I came back to Italy, I started talking about that to all my friends, to the CBT community. And we organized a training, and we invited a trainer from the USA. And we had the first group train here in Italy. So at that point, we had the first 40 clinicians trained in EMDR in 1998. And in these years, it's 23 years, we have trained around 20,000 already.
Wow.
So it has been a big process. EMDR has a big history here, and we're so happy to have seen all the growth of EMDR and how people in every training gets inspired and motivated, and of course they have a lot of difficulties at the beginning and all that, but they still keep trying until they get experts in EMDR, and EMDR is reaching many clients and many populations, and they are all benefiting from this therapy. So at a certain point in all these years, clients would call clinicians and start asking, do you practice EMDR? And if the clinician said no, then they would hang up and call another one until they find another one, someone that really works with EMDR. So it has been very nice to see all this. And in the last year, many hospitals and the National Health Service is asking for EMDR training in the candidates to be hired. So it's one of the criteria to enter the National Health Service as a psychotherapy to be trained in EMDR. Not everywhere, but in many regions of the country.
That's amazing.
So it has been very, very interesting.
I'm just amazed at how much has been going on, particularly in Italy. And you seem so successful in Italy in terms of the association. There's so many members. You're doing so many things. How come? What is your secret? How have you managed to do that?
This is a very difficult question. I think that from the beginning, we started to give so much to the members. We started presenting. There was a core group at the beginning that was very, very active, I think. That was one of the secrets. And they were presenting in many, many different conferences and places. And at the beginning, they were attacked. We don't want to forget that. We went through a very, very difficult times in the first years. We were attacked from someone in the audience all the time. There was always at least one person that would criticize after you were doing your presentation, things like that. So, but that didn't stop the group moving. And as they were moving, other people were trained and were joining. And at that point, they were also presenting, talking to their boss at the hospital, to the, to the colleagues. It has been, something that has gone naturally like that. And it has been a network, it's like the neural networks, that keep associating and moving and creating,
the connections and the growth.
Yeah. It has been something like that. And of course, in every country has been in a way like that. I'm sure that in the UK, you have been working so hard, all the people that have been working in the association, in the board of EMDR UK. So that's the way to go, to reach many people, to reach colleagues, and to reach also clients. And another thing that we have done from the beginning, it was working in humanitarian settings, earthquakes or other big accidents or other natural disasters, terroristic attacks. We had always a team that was working there pro bono. And we were also measuring the level of stress in the acute phase of many people and publishing it. And what we have done, and this is something important, 25 years ago in Italy, there was now such a culture on trauma. And I think the EMDR Association really created that culture. We did a lot of education to institutions, to colleagues. So we really made a lot of advocacy that for the trauma field and the fact that people needed to have specialized intervention and support in the acute phase of trauma, especially when a traumatic event was hitting a whole community. This has contributed a lot to the development of EMDR in in this country.
It sounds like you're saying that you developed a trauma-informed community.
Exactly. And especially with the institutions and with the police and the law enforcement, as people were, sending the psychologists of the police to our trainings, but they still had very, very little resources or tools to work with that. So we gave them not only EMDR, but many things that go around that. So in that case, there was a big prestige that was starting to be recognized to the EMDR Association. And still this year with the pandemic, we have organized like 250 different interventions with hospitals, town halls and municipalities, and also the National Health Service. But in this case, they were all asking the association to help them to give support to the sanitary, to the health workers, in the schools, to the teachers. So the institutions are reaching out for us, and they're really asking now. But it has been the result of all these years of continuous work on this.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think the more you can build that understanding of trauma alongside maybe an understanding of how the AIP model works, then it's easier to understand why EMDR works, and more people are going to want to engage in that and ask for that treatment.
Exactly.
So I know you've been doing so much work, and it was interesting to hear you say that after training, people face difficulties and then go on, to build competencies and confidence later on. So it's good to hear you say that, because that makes us all feel good.
Yeah,
because we've all felt those difficulties. But I was thinking from your own experience, when you just had that early training and you were just getting going, what were the things that you learned? Maybe what clients did you see that enabled you to see the value of pursuing this?
The first clients were the ones that were really giving me very positive feedback about the process they were going through. And so they were the ones that were reassuring me, because I was still a little bit concerned about doing the protocol in the right way, or not forgetting things, or, doing some kind of mistakes or whatever. But the feedback, I could see the feedback coming from them, and naturally of how they were feeling, how their perspective was changing. The SAMS level were at 0 after 20 minutes, after 40 minutes, after 2 sessions, whatever. And at that point, they were saying, now I feel that there was a block and I don't have the block anymore. And that was what we did last time. It was very, very helpful. Or others would start coming and say, what did you do to me the last time, because I started to sleep again, or something happened, So all this feedback from the first clients, say, oh, okay, so let's keep going, and let's keep doing as many EMDR sessions as possible to them, to the others. Let's start with others and things like that. So I think it is the feedback. And now, of course, the people that get trained right now, in the last years, they have a lot of supervision that are provided by consultants that are well trained, and by the associations that are doing a lot of work for continuous education. So now it's very easy. At the beginning, it was, you have to do it yourself a little bit.
And I love that idea that somebody said to you, what is it you did to me?
Yeah.
They weren't expecting the recovery, and yet you were able to deliver that. That's amazing. So I know you've worked a lot with the military, law enforcement, emergency personnel. You were mentioning those. You must have heard some very difficult stories in that time. And I wonder if, from those stories, from those people that you've worked with, were there any cases that have particularly stood out for you to show the value of EMDR?
Yeah, of course. Many times I had to work with militaries or police officers that had a very traumatic experience many years before. They had PTSD, and nobody was treating them, and nobody was helping them in the first hours, in the first days after the event. So what really surprised me is how they wouldn't get any kind of support in the acute phase. And then I would see them many years after that, and I could tell that if they could have had EMDR that same evening or the day after or a week after, they would have avoided suffering so much for so many years. This is something that it is so clear working with the military and with the law enforcement. And how, when I was working with them, with the EMDR, after many years, of course, they had chronic already PTSD or chronic difficulties, and they would respond so well anyway. So it was terrible to see that they were suffering so much for such a long time when, having 1 session, 3 sessions, 10 sessions EMDR could have changed their life and their family. And working with them, I can see how the effects on the family it is.
So that early intervention is so important.
I have one story regarding this. The fireworkers, we were working with them, center of Milan. The boss, one of the bosses told me, I would like you to work with this man, with Albert. He was exposed to a terrible explosion, and we can, all our colleagues can tell that he's really having a terrible time. So we told him, you need to go to the psychologist and get EMDR because we can tell that you're really needy. And he didn't call. 2 months later, the boss calls me and said, did you see Albert? I said, no, he never called me. And he goes, okay, I'm going to tell him again because we can't see him how bad he's feeling and how desperate he is. And we kept telling him, please go. She's waiting for you. You can have, help, and it's going to be very, very useful and things like that. So, he never called. One year later, he calls and he says, I'm Albert from the Fireworkers Center of Milan. I say, okay, I was waiting for your call. And he goes, but I'm not calling for me to get an appointment for me, but I'm calling to get an appointment for my daughter. She's 16 years old. And she started not eating, and now we can see her that she is getting worse, and she's going, I think, into anorexia, and she needs help. So, okay, I saw her 1 week later, and I asked her, what's going on? And of course, she describes everything, and she said, when did that start? And she goes, after Dad had the trauma. So what happened here is that he never got help. In this case, he never accepted help. He never went for help, but he was very, very needy. He was really having a terrible time, very emotional, and everybody, even his colleagues, could tell how bad he was. He looked, and you can imagine his daughter at home. She was an adolescent, and she could absorb all this suffering from her father, and she developed an eating disorder for that. So that is very, very clear how these people, if you don't get help, your family starts carrying the burden of your emotional, your suffering and your difficulties. And especially if you have an adolescent that this is in a very vulnerable age. And so that's why we need to do culture of psychoeducation, and we have to tell everybody about trauma and effects that are sometimes are direct, indirect, visible, not visible, whatever, but they're still there.
And I think the more that trauma remains unprocessed, the more it's likely to come out somewhere, whether it's through your body, through its behavior, or through your family members who are also experiencing it at some level. It will always come out, I think.
Exactly, it comes out.
So you were talking about those fire workers with those emergency personnel, that if you could have been there earlier, then you might have been able to relieve some of the ongoing problems. You were able to get there early for the humanitarian work when you had those nasty earthquakes in Italy a few years ago.
Yes, we did. Yeah, I worked with the population, and we were intervening in the last 4 big earthquakes in Italy. And the first one, it was in 2002, where the earthquake hit a small town in the south of Italy, and the only building that fell down was the primary school, the elementary school, and half of the children died. And so we were working 3 weeks later. We are already on the earthquake site, and we were working with the survivors and with the families, and doing EMDR to their brothers and sisters, and of course to the teachers and to the community. And of course we were also working with the emergency personnel that had to rescue the children, the dead children from the rubbles, and that they were really traumatized. So that was one of the first big interventions we had. Then we had another one in L'Aquila, where the whole city went down. And in 2016, we stayed there in the earthquake site for 10 months, taking shifts. And it was a very, very long intervention. But we couldn't go away after 3 days or 3 weeks like the other emergency psychologists. The mayors of the little towns were asking for more and more support. And also the civil defense were asking us for support. So we stayed there for 10 months. It was very important for all our members that participated in that to be there, because when you work there for 4 days, 5 days, and then you go back home to your office and you work with your client with anxiety or depression or whatever, you feel that you have much more competence, more tools, and you feel even more confident. So working in the field like that is like a school. It's it's a very, very intensive training in the field in a way.
Absolutely. I think that intensive nature of the treatment that you were delivering within a community that was suffering, that must have been just so powerful to see the effects of EMDR working.
Yeah. The good news is that in that kind of population, you see the results right away. And the following day, when you see them after the first EMDR session, they really tell you, last night was the first night that I really slept after the earthquake, after everything. Or they say, now the shakes, because after an earthquake, you have many shakes for weeks. And every shake is like a trigger again. And say, the shakes, I'm not feeling them anymore. Yeah, or they are not disturbing me anymore. Or sometimes I really kind of ignore it or don't feel it. Or if I feel it, I stay calm. And after one session of EMDR, because this is a healthy population, this is interesting to see when you're working in this kind of setting, humanitarian setting with populations after a disaster. That most of them are normal people with no mental problems or whatever, so they respond right away. Even in a situation where they're living in tents and their house doesn't exist anymore, they still are responding to EMDR. that's something that has been so surprising. And for a clinician to see that right after a session or right after 3 sessions or whatever is so rewarding, that, that's why many clinicians kept going there for new shifts for, along all the program that we had.
Well, and I think just for the people to be able to come back and say, with the aftershocks, I didn't get any response to that. I wasn't aroused by that just because of the intervention you had. That's a very immediate feedback that something is working.
A very immediate, exactly.
Yeah. And that was the integrative group protocol I think you were using for the earthquakes, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, the group protocol. Sometimes it was also individual sessions as well. Yeah.
So you can see whole groups of people all moving through their trauma and working towards resolution together as a community. I can imagine why people were going back to feel that they were part of that process, part of that healing. It sounds lovely.
Yeah.
You mentioned before that you were working with CBT. And I was just imagining that when you were talking about those disaster situations, I can't imagine CBT being delivered in that way, as effectively as that.
The only thing that we see is that EMDR is immediate and there's no efforts, no homework, no exercise to make like with CBT. So it's very natural. We can see that we're allowing the brain to really digest part of what has been going on. So it is very, very different from CBT, where we're not processing and we're not allowing the brain to restore the information processing capacity. But with CBT, we're working giving tools or trying to help people, supporting them in a verbal way, in a cognitive way, or giving them strategies or whatever, things like that, which is good anyway. We can always do that. That can't be alone, can be the therapy. EMDR is the therapy, and all the other things are very good things and to tell people eventually. And that's also the integration of CBT and EMDR, where EMDR has to be the center, and with CBT we can share with the client many tools or information, or do some restructuring, or helping them with some beliefs or things like that. But it's not so immediate and so effective in those settings. So
a few years ago, I think you were looking at that when you, in a bit more detail, you were comparing CBT and EMDR for depression. And I wonder what you kind of learnt from that trial, what it was that made EMDR more superior.
Well, we were working with a population of clients with resistant depression, resistant to drugs. They were clients with very chronic depression, of course. And what we saw is that they had a very complex traumatic history. So if you do not access trauma and work with the trauma with the EMDR protocol, there's no way they can respond to the drugs. And of course, if they have CBT also, they are not going to be so effective because the trauma is still there. You have to begin from there. So that was the difference. And we're seeing that also in another research we're doing with the eating disorders right now, and with the National Health Service. And they are comparing CBT and the Fernandel protocol for eating disorders and EMDR protocol. And of course, still, again, people that with eating disorders, they have a traumatic history, they respond much better to EMDR, of course. And then the eating disorder has another kind of development and course. And what we're seeing is that they maintain better their results over time. So this is a big research that we're doing, and we will hopefully have all the data to be published by the end of this year, because it's a big sample.
I will look forward to that. And that just goes to show, doesn't it, that understanding the AIP model and finding those key moments, those key memories that have disrupted the cognitive processing is so important. And that's where the strength is for EMDR, is that we can get back in there and reprocess that, and hopefully life can take a new course.
That is so important, because the clients know that, they respond. You're speaking the language of the client at that point. And the clients understand very well all that. And if you're working with anorexia and you're trying her to change something to make her eat, you're really trying to deal with the symptom. And of course, the symptom is just like the DSM-5 says, it is the result of stress and stressful experiences. So we cannot take away the symptom if we don't know what is causing the symptom. And that's something that has been in the history of psychotherapy for a while. I mean, to understand that. So the EMDR protocol and the case conceptualization and everything that we have in there, it is what psychotherapy has been talking about for many, many years. That's why all our trainees that are psychodynamics or CBT or Gestalt or family or attachment or whatever, they all find something that is common to their approach in EMDR, because EMDR has all the pieces of what many other approaches and psychotherapy is talking about. So it's not only, the protocol, but it is the whole model that is very complete and is very also friendly to the client, because the client really understands EMDR that, and the children understand very well EMDR as well, and that is very surprising.
So having that ability through the AIP model to case conceptualize, to be able to formulate, and to do that collaboratively with your client, it makes sense. This is why we're here. This is what our therapy is about, and this is how your symptoms have developed over the years. I always think of that little quote. I think I saw it on a chiropractor notice board once, which was, "A headache is not the body saying it needs paracetamol."
Okay.
Which I thought really summed it up well. We're not treating that symptom. We've got to understand what the cause is and treat that. And I think it does it so well. I was really amazed at when I was reading up about you. And that was that you're a knight commander.
Yes, that's right.
That sounds amazing. This was something that you were honored by the president of Italy. What does that mean? Does that mean you have to dress up in armor and wander around the streets of Milan? Or
yeah, he gave me some medals, that I can wear around, but of course I will not. I will never do that. And I'm trying to get used to that. Sometimes I remember, I'm a knight commander, because that doesn't really fit into me. But anyway, it has been an important experience, especially because it was given to me because of all the work of the EMDR Association. So it was the EMDR Italy Association also to be recognized with that title, because at the time they gave us this, it was in the beginning of 2019. And we have done 700 interventions in disasters, and we have reached around 20,000 people. So that's why we had this award. And it is an award, that you get it because of merits. So it's like the president of the republic. That doesn't have to do, in EMDR. In Italy, the president doesn't have to do with the political with the Prime Minister, of course, and all the Parliament and all that. That's separate. The President is the one that guarantees the values and, you know, and the law and everything. And he has like an army of night commanders and people like that, but that they are there because of their merits, okay, of what they have given to society and to the people. And so he's got like an army of people that have been really working at that level in case he needs it, which is something very symbolic. He will have an army to intervene of people that have done great things for the others. And we have been able to give so many things to the others because of EMDR. We would have never done it or made it without EMDR, of course. That was the difference.
700 interventions, 20,000 people. I mean, congratulations to you, but also to everyone who's providing EMDR in Italy. And it's just, I think that's a lovely story to show how embedded EMDR is into Italian society and how well respected it is. I think that's brilliant. Well, just before we finish up, I've got to think of the future. We like to think about past, present, and future in these interviews. And I just wonder what's coming up for you. I know you've been working on some research around the efficacy for EMDR with children. I know you've got some other things coming up in the future. Is there anything that you can tell us about? Anything that you're working on in particular at the moment?
I would like to share with you what we're doing also at a European level. And we're trying to develop EMDR in many other countries. We're also supporting other regions, like we're supporting EMDR Africa, supporting EMDR Middle East and North Africa, which is another region. We're supporting any other countries or parts of the world that we can, you know, have a contact and really have collaborations in order to do all this in a humanitarian way. And also EMDR UK has been doing a lot in that field and has been part of that. So it has been a very, very interesting, challenging at the same time task.
It's amazing work that EMDR Europe is doing, Isabel, and we're proud to be part of Europe still, which is really good. And as we said right at the beginning, you thought that you'd been very busy since elementary school. It sounds as though you will continue to be very busy for a number of years still to come. Isabel, it's been absolutely lovely chatting to you. Thank you so much for your time and your stories and your compassionate words. It's lovely to hear from you. Thank you so much.
Thanks to you. And I just would like to send a warm regard to all your members and to EMDR UK.
Past, Present and Future is a Laura Beach production for EMDR UK.